For decades, India's border strategy relied on a quiet, defensive posture. The approach was to hold the line, absorb tension, and avoid escalation. But look at the dense smoke rising in this valley. This physical evidence of unprovoked attacks routinely shatters that delicate status quo. For a frontline commander, these attacks create a dilemma between following orders to maintain the peace and the pressing instinct to strike back. The commander's primary moral obligation isn't to a diplomatic abstraction. His duty is to the physical survival of the men under his command. When leadership mandates a passive stance, soldiers at these borders bear the weight of it. They endure continuous strikes without the authorization to fight back. This creates a dangerous tactical vacuum. A purely defensive posture leaves troops vulnerable and demands a response that the old framework simply cannot provide. With mounting casualties, maintaining the diplomatic status quo is no longer seen as restraint. It represents a failure of leadership to protect the country's armed forces. The military's proposed solution to this vulnerability is specific. The plan is a localized, precise incursion across the border, a surgical strike. As this tactical vector crossing the static line illustrates, this maneuver pivots from absorbing attacks at home to moving into enemy territory. Executing this maneuver requires an intense change in intelligence gathering. The military has to identify the specific handlers of the attacks and map out covert planning locations deep within hostile zones. The vetting process for the mission is rigorous. Only the most specialized pilots are selected, individuals whose records undergo deep scrutiny to ensure their commitment to the mission is beyond doubt. On the ground, the mission relies on elite commando units. The camouflage and heavy weaponry you see here establish the severe tactical reality of a force designed to slip in, strike hard, and extract. The intense preparation for this single covert mission creates the operational blueprint for an entirely new, aggressive national defense protocol. This localized military action feeds directly into an overarching political declaration, the establishment of a new India. The core rule of this doctrine is a refusal to stay quiet. The state will no longer absorb cross-border violence without immediate consequence. Look at this first-person perspective, advancing straight down the road into the mountains. The new rules of engagement mandate crossing into hostile terrain, invading the enemy's home turf, and hitting them where it hurts. This physical violence is calculated strictly as a communicative tool. It delivers a message to the attackers in the exact language of kinetic force they understand. By combining precise military action with hardened rhetoric, the government converts national grief over lost soldiers into a cold, unapologetically aggressive foreign policy. On the eve of the strike, the command structure utilizes extreme rhetoric to galvanize the troops for the violence ahead. The psychological objective shifts. The commandos are no longer told to simply defend the contested land of Kashmir. They are ordered to seek vengeance against the attackers. Commandos weaponize cultural and religious mockery, promising to introduce the enemy to their 72 virgins. This targets the enemy's morale, while giving the strike force a lethal forward momentum. The moral justification for unleashing this force rests on the reality these soldiers face under this grim sky. They inherited an active conflict. The Indian military did not start the war. But against that passive inheritance, the military makes a definitive vow. They promise to close the conflict out entirely on their own terms. That vow turns deep historical trauma into high-octane cultural fuel, generating a unified, roaring spirit among the ranks. Through this highly stylized narrative, Utri operates as a cinematic manifesto. It replaces the long-held legacy of quiet endurance with a modern ethos of nationalistic pride and proactive defense.